Our stories are brilliant. We are resilient. Our stories are brilliant. We are resilient.
Hi, welcome to the Courage Checklist for today. I thought today we would kind of go over in a little bit more detail the types of courage. These are not a hard and fast rule. There's several different sources. I'm going to quote today some things from the article by Chris Drew, PhD, about different types of courage that talks about 6 different types. The first is physical courage. This is kind of easy to understand, really. It's where you keep going in spite of the fact that you might be in physical harm or in danger. Things like maybe you're continuing the race when you're a little bit hurt or you're just exhausted because you have to help your team earn points despite the fact that you're in a little bit of discomfort. Drew in his article gives an example of someone rescuing a child from where they have fallen into the lion enclosure at the zoo. I'm sure you can think of a lot of other examples of physical courage. A lot of people use being in the military as one of these examples and fighting as a soldier. The second type of courage is social courage. This is being courageous while you're facing uncomfortable social situations. This could be things like raising your hand when you have to answer a question in class, or when you have to speak in front of a group. It could be something like having the courage to ask for a raise, or to join a group, or even putting your knitting video out on the internet for public consumption. Things like that. Social courage is a really difficult one for me personally. Having a brain injury, sometimes it feels like I have to use social courage just to have a conversation with people I don't know. I think that happens with a lot of people. And interestingly, I did a poll, and a lot of people are very uncomfortable speaking in front of a group. That's a very specific type of social courage, and one I really feel should be taught a little bit more. But it's interesting. Everybody's got their type that's the hardest for them. So the third type of courage is moral courage. This one is having the courage of your convictions and staying true to your own beliefs. This can be things like Atticus Finch in the book and the movie To Kill a Mockingbird, when he decides to defend Tom Robinson in the trial because it's the right thing to do. Or you could take the example of Florence Nightingale, who felt that it was her moral calling to reduce suffering in spite of the terrible conditions in the Crimean War. And she also cared for sex workers during a cholera epidemic when no one else would care for them. Now, the fourth kind, emotional courage, is a little bit nebulous. It's the courage to be vulnerable and the courage to feel things for others, despite the fact that the emotional involvement might lead you to heartbreak. It takes emotional courage to fall in love, this article by Drew says, or it takes emotional courage to have relationships with friends and family. You're really putting yourself out there. Another form of emotional courage is a really tough one. It's facing former fears, or going to therapy to resolve those fears or issues. The fifth kind of courage, intellectual courage, is about a willingness. It's the willingness to learn new things. It's the willingness to be exposed to new information and new cultures. A person who travels with an open mind, for example, is being intellectually courageous. Or it could be a commitment to be conscious about reading, watching, and listening things that are from a different tradition than the one in which you were raised. Being respectful and listening to others and debating others whose views are different than your own, as I say, respectfully, would be another idea of how to practice being courageous intellectually. The last type of courage is a little bit more tricky, spiritual courage. Spiritual courage is related to intellectual, as Drew states, but it's a little different. It's the idea that you have the courage to examine ideas or beliefs that might not gel with your own. It's also having the courage to think about moral or spiritual debates. He cites examples of those as speaking with others that have different beliefs than your own, or of reading books from another spiritual practice, or even examining things like planning a will or thinking about your own mortality, planning your own funeral, thinking about death. That takes a lot of spiritual courage. Now that we've talked about the different types of courage, I thought it would be kind of interesting for us to talk about how to be courageous as we go towards this courage checklist journey together. Being courageous generally means then facing fear, facing danger, facing adversity, but using bravery to do it. Here are a few tips that I found from some research about how to become courageous. The first is identifying your fears, recognizing what you're afraid of, and understanding that it's normal to feel fear. We all feel fear about so many things. But taking small steps, starting with small challenges and working your way up to bigger ones can help. Or I like to take a task or something that I want to accomplish and break it up into smaller goals on my way to the bigger goals. I feel like I can succeed more if I have the small wins. I like the wins. You can also seek support. Talking to a friend or talking to a therapist about the things you're afraid of can help you find ways to cope with them. For instance, we were talking about public speaking. There's a lot of public speaking groups that help do that. Toastmasters is one of them. I actually have a guest coming up very soon, Barbara Nixon. She talked about that a little bit in her interview, so we'll hear about that from her. You can learn from role models too. You can look to people you admire and try to learn from their experiences. I do that a lot with reading about people like Oprah's whole odyssey and how she became so mega successful. It's fascinating, so interesting, all different kinds of people. You can take pieces of what they did and it can give you a little bit of gumption to try and learn from their experiences. One of the really important things that I found that has been a really hard one for me is practicing self-compassion. Be kind to yourself. Being kind to yourself sounds a lot easier on paper. It's really easy for that voice in your head to be hard on yourself when you don't do something to the best of your ability, or if you aren't able to accomplish the thing you want to do. For me, learning to drive was just like the hardest thing, as I talked about in the last episode. But it's all different kinds of things. It's really easy to get into that record groove, for lack of a better term, where it's just a repeat. You're just not kind to yourself and you're down on yourself about every little thing. But if you're not too hard on yourself, you can really get a sense of accomplishment when you do the small things, and then you can build on that. One of the ways that you can become courageous too is taking calculated small risks. Making a plan and weighing the risks and benefits before taking action can help you kind of see it in a more intellectual way, kind of take you out of yourself and take a little bit of the emotion out of the equation. Makes it a whole lot easier for me. You can also reframe your thinking. If you're changing the way you look at the situation, instead of thinking of it as a threat, think about it as an opportunity for growth. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. I mean, if you need to find a new job, looking for different things that might be exciting, that might be fun, as well as a way that you can make money and prepare for your family and yourself, can really give you a different outlook and a different way to grow as a human. The thing to remember is that courage, the whole idea of courage, is not the absence of fear, but it's the ability to acknowledge the fear and push through it, and remember that it happens to everyone. Fighting fear can be so difficult, but there's some strategies to help fight that fear. You can challenge your thoughts. You can identify all those negative things, and then you can challenge them by asking yourself if they're based on facts or assumptions. You can try to replace negative thoughts with positive and realistic ones. You can use visualization in that way too. Imagining yourself in the situation that you're afraid of, or the thing that you don't want to do, or the reason why you're stopping yourself from accomplishing something on your checklist. But instead of thinking about all the bad things that could happen, visualize a positive outcome. This can help you build confidence and reduce all the anxiety that's around that. You could practice some deep breathing too. There's all different kinds of meditation techniques. I'll share some of those with some other guests later on and share some of the things that I use. But just taking slow, deep breaths in any situation can kind of help you calm down, and then you can relax when you're feeling anxious. And as you're calm, you can think about it more dispassionately. And then one that I really like is gradually exposing yourself to the situation or the object you fear. Exposure therapy is familiar to everybody, but it helps you build resilience because you're familiar to it. And then you don't have to think about the power that fear has over time. I don't know that will ever stop me from being afraid of heights, but I'm better about crossing bridges. And but that one didn't used to be a bad one for me, but it is as I get older. I don't know. It might be an inner ear thing. But mindfulness techniques too, I talked about that a little bit with deep breathing, but all different kinds of mindfulness techniques, such as meditation and yoga, can help you stay in the present rather than dwelling on past experiences and worrying about the future. It helps you take care of yourself. You can also make sure you're getting enough sleep and eating well and engaging in, physical activity. Go for a walk. Taking care of your body and your mind can help improve your mood and reduce all kinds of feelings of anxiety. All these things can help reduce your thoughts of fear, and then it can be a powerful way to build your courage and make you feel stronger, both mentally and physically. So I feel like now that we've gone through the different types of courage and a little bit on how to gain courage, I want to kind of ask a question of the audience. I'd really like for you guys to share with me the kinds of things that you want to do on your courage checklist. I would love to hear from all different kinds of listeners. I'm doing a lot of interviews. I have all different kinds of people lined up to talk with us about their courage checklists and the things that they've overcome and things that they're working on. But I would love to hear from you. So please go to couragechecklist@gmail.com and email me your list. I would love to correspond. You can also go to my website, jenniferbyerschambers.com, and there are information, downloads. You can get your own courage checklist, and we can continue the conversation. I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful week and that you find things that bring you joy. And remember, what's on your list? Keep working towards that. We don't have time. Keep going. There's one last thing this week that I wanted to mention, and it's no pressure at all, but I would really like to encourage you to think about doing something for yourself for 1 hour this week. Something that would make you feel great, something that kind of nurtures your soul and your spirit, whether it's maybe you're sitting down and watching an old musical that you watched with your grandma and it makes you feel wonderful, or if you're going to go and browse for art supplies, or maybe you're just going to go for a walk in a park and just fill your spirit with the beautiful sounds and sights and the greenness around you. Whatever it is for you, do one thing for yourself for 1 hour this week. That's part of something that I've been following through The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. It's a creativity book, and I'm actually doing a series on my Instagram at the Courage Checklist on Instagram. A couple of times a week, we're checking in and talking about our journeys with The Artist's Way. You're more than welcome to join us, but whether you do that or not, I would love for you to please think about doing a nice thing for yourself, something that makes you feel great for 1 hour this week. I'd love to see how it works for you and if it makes you feel good. Have a wonderful week. Thanks so much for tuning in. See you soon.